Hey everybody, welcome back to Survival Prepping for Normal People. I think I'm going to call this video Bondo. Any of you that know anything about the paint and body industry, like when cars get into wrecks or they get dents in them, things like that, and somebody's got to fix it. One of my brothers years ago had a shop, and he would work on cars, but he was also an auto body tech, something he'd learned years before, and he decided to go into business for himself. He's since got back into construction, but when he was doing that, I wanted to learn how to paint cars. So he had the paint booth, all that stuff. I mean, he had it all set up. Anyway, so I would hang out there in my spare time. At this time, I had a job where I would start working at 4:30 in the morning, and I was usually done by 1 in the afternoon. So I'd spend 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon. I didn't have kids, anything at the time. So I'd spend 4 or 5 hours in the afternoon there with him 2 or 3 days a week. And I was learning how to do paint and body repair, which if you stick to it and you're good at it, can be a very lucrative business because there's no shortage of people getting their cars into fender benders and things like that. But anyway, the reason I wanted to call this video Bondo is because I want to talk about a very important subject. I'm going to relate it back to painting cars. Okay. I was the tape man, the guy that masked everything off so it didn't get overspray and stuff on it. That was my official title at the body shop, but I was learning how to do other things. Anyway, got pretty good with the Bondo, pulling dents, dry icing them, things like that. But that's not the main thrust of this video. I wanted to talk about the fact that the prep work is being done, because you see, in the auto body industry, the most important steps to repairing a paint job, to restoring a vehicle, to looking good again, is all the prep work that goes into it that you don't see. Okay, you see the paint, you see the clear coat, you see the finished product, but what you don't see is all the prep work that goes into it, and that's where the expense is. There's a lot of work that goes into the finished product. You can't just spray over something and expect it to look good. You've got to, like I said, you got to pull the dents. You got to sand it. You got to prime it. You got to paint it. You got to sand it. You got to paint it. You might have to put 2 or 3 coats of paint. You might have to put flex additive in the paint depending on what type of material you're painting. Okay? And then if you're going to clear coat this thing, and then you got to bake it, and there's all kinds of steps that go into making a car look good. So the groundwork, the prep work before you get the finished product is very important. And I've noticed something very disturbing, and I'm sure you guys have too. And I hadn't made a video about it yet because I wanted to preface it in just the right way. The way I do things. Tie it to something else that you can understand step by step and see how this is working step by step. The white nationalist narrative. Funny, I don't feel like a white nationalist. I guess I'm a civic nationalist. That is such a thing. I mean, if you had to lump me into some kind of nationalistic category, that's where I would be, because I believe that my country should be the best that it can be, and everybody else be damned. If you don't take care of things at home, what does your image or relations around the world matter when your home is falling apart? That's like being the guy that goes around town and everybody loves, and they shake hands and they want to shoot the breeze, but he goes home and he lives in a shack and his kids aren't fed and it's chaos. Okay? What's the point of having all that stuff out there in his orbit? Everybody thinks he's the greatest guy, but when it comes down to it, the fundamentals aren't there to support Mr. Handshake breeze shooting guy that everybody just thinks is so great because his own home is falling apart. So I guess in that sense, I view what you call a civic nationalist. I want to see my country do well. And I want to see my countrymen do well. And that's priority one. Over anybody else's problems or anybody else's business. But you see, the political climate, the prep work is being done right now. Because they're not ready to paint yet. But everything's getting primed. And what do I mean by that? If you haven't been paying attention to big media, and I don't blame you, I pay scant attention to it, but when I do, I listen. and I try to listen between the lines. You know, the New York Times had this leak where they pretty much admitted that they're going to go after Trump as a racist and a white nationalist now because the Russian narrative fell apart, and they need to continue to sell papers. They need to continue to sell ads on their website, and they pretty much want to destroy the country from the inside out because journalists have become nothing less than a bunch of left-wing activists. Okay, we all pretty much understand that, right? So if you are the kind of person that believes in America First type policies, okay, whether you're a Trumpster or not, you know, that's neither here nor there, okay? I have a lot of issues with the guy. You guys know that. There are a lot of things I agree with, okay? And at least he makes politics not boring. Politics after Trump is going to be the most boring thing ever, right? If there is politics after Trump. Well, that's all yet to be seen, but they're laying the groundwork. They are doing the prep work now. So that if you don't believe in open border policies, if you don't believe in tearing down American sovereignty, if you don't believe in upholding, or I should say undermining American exceptionalism, if you don't think that America sucks and should pretty much be destroyed and rebuilt in some socialist utopia, quasi-authoritarian, technocratically controlled communist paradise, then you are going to be labeled a white nationalist. Now, there's nothing wrong with being a nationalist, okay? Since World War II and the National Socialist Party in Germany, also known as the Nazis, anybody who would say that they're a nationalist has been painted with that broad brush. Oh, you're a nationalist? You must be a Nazi. No, I'm not an internationalist. I'm not a globalist. I believe that every country should strive to be as good as it can be and compete on the world stage. I think every person in the world should be a nationalist for the country in which they live. And if they don't like it and they have no sense of national pride or patriotism, maybe they should do something to change that. Instead of suffering under regimes that don't give a rat's ass about their people or their rights. China much? Anyway, so I see the frame up happening. If you don't believe in open borders, if you don't believe in giving preeminence to non-citizens over the citizens, okay, if you don't believe that it's cool to tax everybody who builds this place so that you can provide stuff for people who didn't, then you're going to be labeled a nationalist. But that's not where they're going to stop. They're going to make it personal. They're going to make it visceral so they can get a gut reaction when they say it. You're going to be labeled a white nationalist. Well, what if you're not white? In my case, off-white. Right? What if you're not white, but you are an American patriot? You believe that the system as it was created to operate is exceptional. America has the oldest, longest surviving constitutional system ever in the history of mankind. And the reason is because other countries around the world, when things are convenient, they just change the rules. They have no bedrock. They have no limitations. Nothing says, this is as far as you can go with your radical new ideas and no further. So they end up being a mishmash and a hodgepodge of political ideas and beliefs and idealisms that they just kind of stumble through history. What's made America so great, and it's not a coincidence, that America is the world's preeminent military power, that America is the world's preeminent economic power, that America innovates more than anybody else ever in the history of mankind. You know, 90% of what people take for granted in the modern world, around the world, guess where that came from, babe? That's right, it was all invented here. Mass production, the assembly line, the light bulb, cable television, and whatever else you can think of. Medical innovations, scientific, military, economic, law, whatever cool stuff works really good and other people are copying it other places, it came from here. So it's not by accident that we have a system, a boundary, if you will, that controls government power so that people's passions don't run rampant and they change things willy-nilly based on how they feel today. It might sound like a great idea today, but the people that started this understood that you can never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups, especially if somebody's getting them whipped up into a fervor, because what have we discussed before, kids? You cannot think and feel at the same time. So the prep work's being laid. The primer, okay? People say, oh, they want to paint me as a white nationalist. No, 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 no. They're not painting you. Not yet. They're priming you. Getting everything ready for the next step. If you believe in the virtues of patriotism, if you would like to see your country, your nation, your neighbors, your countrymen do well, and that doesn't mean bending over backwards and just taking a beating and handing out money to whoever asks for it, or whoever says they have a grievance, who didn't earn it, you're a bad guy. That's what they would like you to believe. Because you see, if you don't side with the socialists, they're going to label you a white nationalist. Like I said before, what if you're not white? Well, then you're a collaborator. And that's even worse, because you've sold out your race to side with the white nationalist. Now, nationalist is the key word in that term. White is the word they use to achieve their goal. To make white people feel guilty. To make white people disassociate themselves from nationalists, because nobody wants to be called a racist and a white supremacist. Have you noticed how the racism angle and the white supremacist angle is starting to die down, but the white nationalist angle is ramping up? It's because they want nationalism, which is really nothing more than rooting for the home team. They want that to be equivalent to racism and white supremacy. I've known very few true white nationalist, white supremacists in my life. I've known a few, but very few. They tend not to be your most well-educated people. They tend not to be your most well-adapted people socially. They tend to be very single-minded. Now, I'm not saying they're not smart. They tend to be very limited in their thinking because they can't see past a person's skin color. Well, guess what? Bad people come in every flavor. So do good people. I believe in the promise of what America could be. I believe that when we pull together, we have, can, and do achieve great things. There are forces afoot that want to divide and anger. And it's all by design. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's right out there. The New York Times had a memo from a meeting leaked where they admitted the strategy, and don't think they're the only ones. It's not about attacking the president. Trump's a big boy. He can stand up for himself. He doesn't need me to do that. I'm not a Trump apologist at all, by any stretch of the imaginations. He's done some good things. He's done some stupid things, especially when it comes to gun control. He's trying to crawfish, backtrack on that a little bit now, which is a good thing. He's becoming a true politician, right? Says one thing, then he has to kind of walk that back. He's learning. He's a very adept individual. I'm sure he'll be able to handle it. But he is right about having an America First policy. If things are falling apart here at home, then who gives a damn about anything else? Get your house in order first. But saying such things would have the leftists and the socialists label me a white nationalist. So before any of them do, I want to let them in on something. I'm only half white. So I'm only a white nationalist half the time. Kind of confusing, I know. I like to throw their own intersectionality back at them whenever I get the chance to. The situation's being primed. It's being prepped. The finished product is what matters. They want to destroy our nation, but they have to do it from within. Because we would unify against any external threat. Well, mostly. Enough of us would unify to stop it. And we would drag the rest of the ne'er-do-wells along, kicking and screaming, but it would happen. So we must be divided against ourselves. And the house divided. Well, you know the rest. But that's all this white nationalist thing is about. They don't really think Trump is a racist. He's not. There are very few true racists. They're out there, but not in the numbers that the New York Times would have you believe. You can be a nationalist. You can root for the home team. It doesn't make you a Nazi, and it doesn't make you a white supremacist, but it does make you enemy number one to those people who would love to fundamentally change your nation forever. So I'm going to ask you, what have you done today to get ready?